presentation. Joining us are Perry Masden and Monica Carruthers to discuss the life and times of the Colchester Schoolhouse. And I just wanted to give you a few words introducing Perry and Monica. Perry Basden has been a longtime resident of Essex County. He grew up in LaSalle, Ontario, where he lived from 1947 until 1967, when he married his wife, the former Gloria Mayu, also a former resident of LaSalle. They moved to Windsor after their marriage. Perry and Gloria lived in Windsor most of their adult lives, except for about 8 years when they lived in Aylmer, Ontario. They returned to Windsor and lived there until moving to their retirement home in Colchester in late 2019. Perry has been a Ford Motor Company retiree for the past 16 years, where he had previously been employed at the St. Thomas Assembly Plant and various Windsor sites as a member of the skilled trades workforce. Perry's interest in genealogy began after his father's death in 1988. After finding previously unknown documents that his father had in his possession, including documents from relatives in the England areas, the curiosity factor took hold and Perry's genealogy quest began. His grandparents settled in Essex County in 1921, where his grandfather, Charlie Basden, worked as a molder at the brick and tile yard in Essex. Perry has managed to trace his genealogical roots back to 1768 in Buckinghamshire, England. His late mother's roots through the Kavanagh name go back to 1773 in Kilkenny, Ireland. More recently, Perry saw an opportunity to form a nonprofit organization through affiliation with the Ontario Historical Society when the town of Essex in late 2020 had intention to declare the school section number 2, Colchester Schoolhouse, as surplus. He will be telling you all about that. Monica Carruthers has been a resident of the hamlet of Colchester since 2010 after relocating from Hamilton. She was a member of the Essex County War of 1812 Committee in 2010, and that is how she began her interest in the history of the area, as well as a wonderful opportunity to meet members of the community. Since that time, she's been exploring the local history and took a special interest in the Colchester Schoolhouse during an open house hosted by the town of Essex. After beginning to research her own family history, she soon discovered that her great-grandmother was born in Colchester in 1879, and the true love of the history of the village was cemented. She is one of the original members of the old schoolhouse community garden that is hosted by the town on the schoolhouse property, and is also interested in the chimney swifts that use the schoolhouse chimney. Joining the local community in their quest to save and restore the schoolhouse, Monica is also a member of Heritage Colchester. So now I'm going to turn it over to Monica, who will share her screen, and I believe Perry will begin their discussion.
While you're doing that, Monica, if you don't mind, I'll just say thank you for the warm introduction. It's been a long time that this project has been coming together now, and we're glad to be here to share some information with the group, all the members that are here tonight. And basically, we're just waiting for Monica's screen to come up here. And in the meantime, I can actually start with the material that was already presented, I believe, as a handout material. Basically, most of the information I have handed out tonight, or the good majority of it, the older stuff in particular, regards the school site when it was first built, and it was taken from a dedication ceremony for the 1952 edition of the schoolhouse that was put on. It was presented at that time by Mr. Walter Glenn Baldwin, who was an ex-pupil of SS number 2, Colchester South, at the dedication ceremony. The Baldwin name is quite famous down in this area, and I'll relate that a little bit later on in my area of discussion here. But the present school site, 195 Bagot Street in Colchester, very easy to find if you're out in the area. County Road 20, head towards the lake on Bagot Street, which is the second street before you leave the town, if you will, right across the street from Christchurch. So it's fairly simple to find. The original grant was issued in 1849 by order of Council of Government of Upper Canada, so that the schoolhouses would be built. There were several sites selected for many of the schools. I'm going to kind of skim some of these notes that have been handed out because there's a lot of information there. We don't need to go through all of it. I'm sure everybody's quite capable of reading it, and we'll find some things very interesting in there.
Excuse me, Perry.
Yes.
Are you to see the screen now?
Yes, we are. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
So the first school section was founded in bylaw number 4 in 1850. Bylaw number 21 set up the boundaries for all the schools in the area. And as you can see from the notes, they were numbered 1 through 7 for the white schools, and the schools for the blacks were, or freedom seekers as they prefer to be called since coming here, were identified by the letters of A to D. The bylaw also appointed an owner for each school section to call the first meeting of freeholders to elect a person to act as a trustee. And in the school section 2, it was Mr. Morgan Baldwin. Now, he originally emigrated from New Haven, Connecticut, and came out to Colchester. And so the author of the first section I'm going through, Walter Glenn Baldwin, would be his grandson. On March 5th, 1881, the board consisted of various individuals. Francis Wright. Wright is a very popular name out here, still in existence with descendants. Timothy Shea, not much information on them anymore. Hackett, name is also prominent in a lot of the early history, but that name seems to have died out over time. So Mr. Whitson Baldwin, another relative of Walter Glenn, chaired the first meeting, and unfortunately there was some issues with the method of calling the meeting. People said they didn't have enough notice, so they delayed it, and it finally got moving some years later. Another name was popular out here and still is the construction contract for the school was let to Mr. Charles Eiler. Eiler is still a very popular and ancestral name from around the area. The school was built originally for the sum of $1,650. Desks were purchased from Middleditch Foundry. Don't have any information on that myself, from Amherstburg. Haven't had a chance to get any research done on that one yet. But when all was completed, they had a whole 4 cents left of their budget when the school was done. And then in 1887, a woodshed was built on the north end of the school by Mr. John Knapp, also related to the Baldwins, for $25. So most of those comments come from the Amherstburg Echo, June 5th, 1952. Moving on then, school was used, we get some of the early history and we'll get into the more modern times here. The school was used from 1881 until 1952, and was used at that time as a one-room schoolhouse with the woodshed that you see on the school photo on the screen. It was somewhat smaller than that, I believe, at the time. It may have been enlarged from what we can determine. One of the later owners used that for a stable for a horse. So it was basically a one-room schoolhouse until 1952, with the new addition was put on. Consisted of 2 classrooms on the south side towards the lake, and there was also washrooms installed, and an office. One of the first schools in the area to have an office in the school itself. That was in use until 1965, when it was officially closed and students transferred to the newly built grade school in Harrow. The school students were then bused in. Somewhere after that time, don't have the specific date yet, it was sold to a local resident, George Curtis. Now, George Curtis owned other property along the lake. We also had some cottages situated around the schoolhouse at that time that George owned. And he would use it to invite disabled veterans, people from this town of Windsor, to come out here and spend some time in the cool and quiet out by the lake and enjoy the summer weather. George Curtis eventually sold it to Dr. Mark Trozy, who converted the 1881 school portion of the schoolhouse into a residence. He put a loft in, which covers about a third of the old 1881 building. And underneath that, there was a bathrooms and kitchen area, but he used the other 2/3 as his living room. There were some issues that came out from what history records, that some of the residents didn't like the idea of having horses in the community. And the town of Essex was putting pressure on them to move the horses out of the area. Whether that statement is true or not, we have no actual records that would make that provenance. We have no way to document that right now. But on August 28th, the town of Essex purchased property and with the intent to use it as a community center. And unfortunately, they never did get around to it. There is a building at the marina. Underneath, that lower floor was used as a snack bar right now to this day. And the above area was used as a restaurant. And unfortunately, being a seasonal business and the restaurant was not profitable for a good number of individuals. It seemed like every fall, they just close up and walk away and say, we just can't keep operating this way. So the town decided then to change that into a community center of some sort. And as a matter of fact, Heritage Colchester had an event there this past weekend. Beautiful view, lousy acoustics, and the town is aware of it. But it was a very well-attended event as well. So the town never did start the project themselves. And then they're still struggling trying to get that community center they have rented out for whatever reason. A lot of it has to do with accessibility issues and things like that. On December 7th of 2020, the town of Essex declared the old schoolhouse property as surplus, served notice in the newspapers. And some of the neighbors got together and said, no, this just can't be. We've been waiting all these years, since 2008, to see this come to fruition as a community center. So some of the neighbors got together and opposed the declaration and formed a loose-knit organization known as Friends of the Colchester Schoolhouse to see whether we couldn't save this for the community and help restore it. Remember, it's been sitting vacant for all these years. Since 2008 that the town had it. They had to replace the roof on it. There's some water damage inside. Put new windows on it, vinyl ones which aren't period appropriate to it, things like that. But so we did approach town council and convince them that they should allow a group to take possession of it of some sort and see whether we couldn't get the rest of it done and form a historical society or whatever means necessary. A lot of this information was already in the documents from the Municipal Heritage Committee minutes, where they have had people come forward and shown interest in it, but nobody really followed up on it. So they usually ended up just walking away from it. But I guess this group is a little more persistent, so we managed to do it. We had to delay because there was an offer pending on the property. The Flynn group from Colchester, from Kingsville, owners of the Grove Hotel, wanted to purchase the property from the town of Essex, put 15 small cottages around the area, demolish some of the 1952 school, but use the existing 1881 structure as a bridal suite and operate it as a hotel rooms. However, when we challenged them on it, and it's basically residential areas all around it, except for Christchurch's cemetery, also historic properties in their own right. And they were encouraged to look elsewhere by me and other people. And since that, they have started building the Grove Motor Hotel on County Road 50 itself, the corner of Dunn Road. They expect to have that done sometime this fall, perhaps. So on March 21st, 2021, we formalized the Heritage Colchester, not-for-profit affiliated with the Ontario Historical Society. And December 8th, the town of Essex signed a long-term lease agreement for us with the schoolhouse. And from that, now we're been raising funds ever since that time as best we can. Anybody who's started a historical organization will know that the first 2 years are usually your hardest. You have to have the financial documents to get government grants, whether it be from the Ontario Children's Foundation or provincial or federal. Most of them want a minimum of 2 years of financial documents, and it has to be by calendar year. Well, we incorporated in March, so that kind of put a halt to that now. So we have not even completed a full year yet, according to their standards, but we're coming through, we're applying for them. Monica was mentioned as having an interest in chimney swifts, and there's a rather large chimney on the new edition we put on 1952, where the swifts are roosting on a regular basis every evening. So they're half an hour before sunset to about half an hour after, you can watch them come into roost. We did apply for a grant from Birds Canada, unusual as it sounds, have funded by the federal government of environment and climate change to do repairs to the chimney, and we're successful in that with matching grant from the town of Essex. So work will be started on that one this fall. But so that will be what we're doing this fall is we're looking at taking up the balcony and getting it back to the original footprint for the old schoolhouse and see where that takes us. So with that, I'll leave it open and off to Monica, and she can carry on with some of the names that I mentioned, the Quicks, the Eiders, Baldwins, very important names in the history of Colchester. If anybody has any questions, we could welcome to take those if you want, or we can wait and do them all at the end. It's up to you. Monica, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to sit back quietly.
Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of our humble beginnings of Heritage Colchester. And as was in my introduction, and thank you very much for that, Linda, I became interested in the schoolhouse when the town had an open house. And I actually presented a PowerPoint to the open house with brainstorming ideas of what we could use that for. And that was when we thought that it would become a community center. So now we're well on our way to doing that. So it's very exciting. And in the meantime, people who have ancestors or who actually attended the schoolhouse themselves have been coming with photographs to share with us. And so some of those are what you'll see tonight. And also just a few pictures of the inside of the schoolhouse. I can't advance my slide. Okay, this is one of the plaques on the side of the schoolhouse that says, you know, school number 2, 1881. And this window that you could see in the first picture that we looked at is actually looking into what they is the teacher's area. It juts out a little bit, and inside is called the teacher's walk, and it's raised a little bit. There it is there, and so the teacher could stand above, higher above the students and be well seen by them. And so that is still in existence, and that will be saved. And
Hi, Monica. Sorry to interrupt. You're sounding a little bit echoey. I'm not sure if maybe, do you have are you using like a separate mic? Maybe just try aiming it.
no,
I'm
I'm
different.
a laptop mic, but I don't know. Maybe if I shut
Okay.
off.
No, we can't hear you now. Oh,
How's that?
try again.
Okay, we'll try that again.
Okay, it's still a bit echoey, but I think it should be okay.
Okay, sorry about that. The belfry is there. In some of the original pictures, you'll see that it had a little bit more gingerbread woodworking on it, but that's how it looks today. So the next few pictures are taken from this book. The picture on the left is the front cover of the book, which I reduced a little bit. And the book is called The Story of Public Schools in Colchester South Township. and it was actually put out by the Board of Education. And down in the bottom, you can see that the board at the time was Walter Selleck, who is one of the founders of Selleck Equipment here in Harrow, and some of the other names. But Glenn Mortimer, we'll see one of his ancestors, and I'm not quite sure who she is, but that name was mentioned in the first graduating picture that we have from 1905. Glenn Mortimer was a scientist at the Harrow Agricultural Resource Station for his entire career. Very, very well-known scientist in agriculture. This is the first picture that we have from the book, and it's from 1888. And the only name that we have is the teacher, who is T.E. McDonald. And unfortunately, for the time, you can see that there was segregation, obvious, but also those children from the Black community were able to go to school. That was when the Education Act changed to include all children going to school. And so that's a very large group of students who would have been in the one-room schoolhouse in that photo. This is partly what Perry was talking about from the Harrow News. So Perry, is that part of your handout? Because we can include that if it's not.
The information is very similar. It's a slightly different article, but it was based on most of the information that I have already presented.
Okay.
Although it has more information about George Curtis, for instance, and his age at the time that was written, like that. So
this is the next picture that we have of any students from the schoolhouse, and it's the graduates of 1905. There you can see some of the more common names that Perry mentioned, like the Shea family and the Wright family. There are also a lot of Foxes in the Colchester area, and Cleese, and there you can see Vera Clee is one of the grads. Laura Mortimer is, I'm not sure how she's related to Mr. Mortimer, who was on the Board of Ed, but maybe some more digging. Most of the information that we have been able to gather feels like the very tip of the iceberg, and we have just so much to learn about who came to this area and lived here and were founding members of the community as it is now. This is the next photograph that we have, which is from 1928. And happily, from the standpoint of inclusion, the students are all mixed together and included together in the class. I'm just going to advance to the next slide because it tells you in the book that we were able to get, it has lists of students by year. And so you can see the teacher is Miss Mildred Fotheringham. And then some of the other prominent names that we've mentioned are the Clee family. McVitie, Gwen McVitie in the first row is listed, and her family ran McVitie's Grocery down here right close to the beach, and was a very, very well-known family. Many people here that live here now remember that building and that store. And so many, there's a Hannah Baldwin, a Gil Baldwin, who are descendants of Mr. Baldwin, who was part of building the schoolhouse in the first place. This is Baldwin House that was built the same year as the schoolhouse, and it's just been remodeled, and it is a bed and breakfast. But inside is beautiful original wood with, pocket doors, and I'm sure in 1881 it was a very well-to-do home, and it's on County Road 50. It stands as it's seen there right now. This is a picture of George McVitie's market that I was mentioning earlier, one of the earliest pictures of the market. And then this is a more modern one. And to the left of the market is actually the dance hall. There was a dance hall down here in Colchester, if any of you know that history. So a bit more modern picture. If you have any questions or things to add, please don't hesitate to jump in. This is our next picture that we have from 1933. Oops, sorry about that. Again, the schoolhouse was still a one-room school, and many of the pictures that we have were taken outside, but you'll see coming up shortly the interior of the school when they took school photos then. The student at the right-hand side of the picture wearing a striped dress is Gwen McVitie, and she is the relative of the McVitie store that I just showed you a moment ago. Also, oh, I can use my pointer. Can you see my pointer when I use it? This young man here that I'm hovering over right now is Daniel, and he actually built the cottage that I am sitting in right now. He and his wife, who was American, bought this property, built this cottage, and we purchased this property in 2004. So when I found out that I had a picture of the man who built the cottage, I was pretty excited. And this is the class list of that group, and you can see there, unfortunately, the rows are flipped, so Daniel Noble is the second from the left that I was just talking about. Many popular names again, Toffelmeyers, and actually there is a Toffelmeyer Cemetery on County Road 50. Many Johnsons in this area still remain. It's a very, very large family, and still many of the descendants of the Johnsons are living in the village itself and nearby. Also, you can see Mary and Betty Marsden. Their grandfather ran a store, and now their road is called Marsden Beach, just outside of the village of Colchester. So many of these names of these children became street names and names of, you know, beaches and prominent landmarks around here because of their influence and their, you know, their mark on with the community. So this is the next picture we have, 1937, and it's an interior shot of the schoolhouse. Some of the students, you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen, some of the desks are empty, so they've kind of piled over onto the next row so they could all fit in the picture. But it's a very large group, and you can see on the right-hand side, there's the stovepipe going up, and the teacher at the back there. This is that class's list. And again, similar names. Some of the people in our group are related to some of these students in the Heritage Colchester group. Some of them are cousins or siblings or children of these children. So it's starting to come full circle for the people that are on the Heritage Colchester committee, and they're very excited to be able to preserve the schoolhouse. This is another indoor class picture from 1939-40 school year. Again, a very full group of inside. And this is their list. I know it's a lot of names to look at, but similar names as the children grew up, they're you know, continue to be in the pictures. And so do their siblings and then their children eventually. These are some of the teachers from 1962, Miss Anderson, Miss McConnell, Mr. McCallum, and Miss Linton. And actually in this picture, you can see at the top, there is the writing above the door, SF number 2, Colchester School. Those numbers are missing right now, but potentially we may end up replacing those again. I know Perry's interested in those. So some of the families that I've mentioned that have left their mark, and as again, roads and beaches are named after them. Schneider Toffelmeyer Cemetery, Marsden Beach, Wright Road, Baldwin Beach, Eiler Road, and it goes on and on. This is the cottage that I am sitting in, but it doesn't look like that anymore. We've changed the exterior, but as I mentioned, Daniel Noble's family did build this cottage in 1945, so we're honored to be in here. And there were some original things in the cottage that we have kept. So this is our contact information for Heritage Colchester, our email there. We do have a website, heritagecolchester.ca, and our Facebook page has all of the pictures that you have just seen. So if you want to see those pictures and more, there are more than that. Some of them are from the village, historical things that were in the village, more things down at the beach. There was a fishing industry here, so there was fishing boats to rent, and there was a bathhouse and a beach house, a snack bar down on the beach. All of those things, unfortunately, are gone. But any pictures that we have shown you today are on that Facebook page as well, under different photo albums. And there is our phone number. I hope that's still the phone number, Perry.
Yes, it is, Monica. That's my home phone number. At the schoolhouse as it exists now, we do not have water. We do not have gas. We do not have, well, the only thing we've got basically is electricity right now. So we're striving to get an occupancy permit, which is going to be, once that's determined, then we can start using the building for even our own meetings for our Heritage Colchester group. But we're working on that. It's coming together a bit at a time. Right now, I had a conversation today with an electrician who's interested in helping us disable all the electricity that was put in by Dr. Mark Trozy, so that we can start demolishing the building. But before we do that, we have to get up into the attic and find out how the bell works, because there is a rope up there in the attic, but nowhere below it. When they repaired the ceiling inside the schoolhouse, they just hid it away. And I guess they didn't want to use it at that time, but we're good. The bell does work. I've been up there last summer with another member, Randy's here, and we had a man lift available and went up there and rang the bell, and everybody came out and said, "What the heck's that?" They hadn't heard it for a good number of years, let's put it that way. So we're looking forward to doing small gains every year.
And sadly, I missed the ringing of the bell. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Hi, it's Cindy. I was just wondering, did any of the early school records survive? Like, the daily register that the teacher would have filled out, any of those type of things? And if they did, are they currently in your possession, or would you know where they have gone?
So far, we do not have any of those records, and nor do we know if they exist or where they might be. We are advocating for people who are interested in our project for more things, and pictures are most of the things that people have shared. This coming Saturday, we're having a vendors market, as we have had last year and this year, and the schoolhouse will be open if people want to go inside. We kind of cleaned it up last week.
So if people do have more photos or artifacts or any type of documents and material, they should just reach out to you. And are you in a position to accept donations right now?
Yes.
Great.
That said, we don't have a charitable status yet. We cannot give tax receipts. We are in a process of applying for it, and been jumping through hoops for the government trying to get it done. But it's a long, drawn-out process, and we've been working on it for the better part of this year and don't seem to be making much headway. But yes, we will accept cash donations or checks, whatever you wish to give us. Artifacts, we're a little leery of that right now. We have nowhere to store them. And if people have something, we have a couple desks that have been donated to us. They're not from the Middle Age Foundry, though. They're made by Globe Manufacturing, well-known group that manufactured a lot of the cast iron frames. So we've got a couple of those. It's not our intent to fix it up as a classroom for teaching, but we want to use it as a multi-purpose rooms so that we can hold events there, whether it's showers, weddings, service groups, any type of organization that will need space for meetings. We're willing to work with them on that. That's the only thing I see. Now, the phone number you see there, that's my home phone number. So don't feel shy about calling it. We can do that. It's not a problem.
Okay, that was actually one of the another question was what was the end result? Like, I wasn't sure if you were, hoping to petition a portion of it off to have more like a museum type of thing and with the artifacts, or you're strictly moving in the direction of what you said, having it more as a community accessed for meetings and things like that.
As it stands now, we intend to focus the restoration on restoring the 1881 section back to its original footprint, getting more working washrooms in it, which is in the 1952 edition, typical layout, girls' bathroom, boys' bathroom, and an office and a furnace room. And that's all we have in that portion. Unfortunately, the town of Essex destroyed 2 classrooms that were on the south side of the school. If you drive by, you'll see the wall is stucco right now. Well, there was a 2-room classrooms on there, about 25 foot deep by about 75 foot long for the classrooms, 2 classrooms. We would love to put those back on, but I don't think I'll ever see it in my lifetime. The town of Essex owns the building. We'd have to do a lot of fundraising to cover the total cost of it. They have indicated that they will honor a lease agreement and pay for some of the equipment that's there. A lot of it, for instance, the electrical panels have reached their end of useful service life, and that can be covered by the town of Essex for replacement. But as far as a complete new 2 classrooms, that's going to take a long time. But the more, if we get it back to the 1952 footprint, those should be back on there. And it's my personal goal to see if we can't get that done somehow over time. Maybe when we do get some more funding available. There's a lot of government funding is available for celebration years. If you're celebrating a 100th anniversary or anything in 50-year increments after that, or 25-year increments, I'm not sure which, but a lot of times things just seem to fall in our lap when we're talking about putting things together. And today was one of those days. As a matter of fact, I was in there putting a sign together that was used for the bicentennial celebration. We found in the building and trying to find ownership of who owns it, but we haven't been able to. So somebody said, why don't we just put it together and put it outside at the market this weekend? So I've been trying to reestablish that. Unfortunately, the town of Essex cut a chunk out of it and used it to block a broken window on the door. So I've put another cover on the door and piecing the other ones back together. It's still in pretty good shape. So.
But as far as photographs, yeah, I'm the person who currently, puts the Facebook page together, and I create the event notifications and things like that. So I have digitally kept the photographs that people have shared so far. And we actually have a few families. For example, we have the Baldwin family. We have more photos to share and more stories to share. I know Perry has recently met with some of them, and other families who have things to share. And we, really basically just need to get time to meet with them. COVID, of course, has made everything be a Zoom call, but that's okay too. It makes people can be available that way, maybe more easily as well. So anything, stories also, we're looking for stories of people who went to the schoolhouse or who heard from, their grandfather or grandmother or someone in the family that what life in the day of the schoolhouse in Colchester was like. And I'm sure that there's a few stories about how cold the outhouse was and things like that before there was indoor plumbing. More pictures are coming, more pictures are on the Facebook page that have no names, and people have started to fill in the names for us by just in the comment section. And then I've got a running record of who they have identified as their family member. So.
We have another question that has come up. Are there any other buildings that Heritage Colchester wants to save?
Not at this time. However, I'm just writing a response here and I haven't posted it yet. Our mandate when we started, part of our constitution and bylaws and mission statement, was to restore heritage properties in Colchester. So for instance, if somebody had an old cottage of one of the original ones, if you will, small ones, which were basically pretty well open. They were used more of as a bunkhouse than anything. Of course, in those days, cottages weren't insulated. They were seasonal use only. Many, as Monica can attest to, did not have windows. They had screens and shutters, and that's about it. If we can have one of those at some other future date, and not now because we're going to be tied up with the schoolhouse, but there are still a few of those around, and we'd love to be able to keep one of those and restore that for future generations to see what it was like to live in a small 1-bedroom or no bedroom cottage in Colchester along the lake. And there was so many of them there years gone by that there's very few left. But there are a few around. And yes, we would we'd be interested in doing that at a later date, but not now.
Yeah. Does AIRS have any information about the schoolhouse?
Unfortunately, they don't have very much. They have basically a little bit about all the schoolhouses that were in Colchester South Township. The information I've got, they only had the 2 documents, the one Monica showed you, and the one that I used to get my notes from. That's all they had on school section number 2. The records, we believe, have been destroyed when the amalgamation took place, forced amalgamation by the provincial government. And we have not been able to locate any records from the schoolhouse itself or any schoolhouse in Colchester South Township. So we're still looking. We're hoping we could be able to find something in the future. You never know when you're going to stumble across something. Like Monica said, with that picture of the teachers with the lettering over the door. No one had the slightest idea that there was lettering over that door. So I put out a comment when Monica posted that on Facebook. I said, anybody got a picture of the rest of the lettering? I don't know whether it was spelled SS number 2 Colchester, or it was Colchester-South, or just Colchester South. Well, we can replace that. From the picture Monica has, I've been able to scale the size of the lettering and the spacing and everything else just from the picture. And anybody who happens to drive by my house in Colchester, when I had my home built, I made a sign over the garage that spells out the number and the street name in full. So it's a very simple thing to do. CNC cut letters, epoxy coat them so for long life, and stick them up there. That's all there is to it, and paint accordingly. But that's on my agenda of things to get done for the schoolhouse. It's a relatively easy fix. Replace the broken window, fix the damage to the doors around the area. A lot of the wood is checked and things like that, which can be repaired with marine plywood or marine epoxy, and sand it down and paint it up and look just like that. So we're working on that.
Good.
It's Cindy again. In some of the pictures you mentioned and you pointed out the segregation a little bit and then the inclusion. Have you partnered with or leveraged, the Essex County Black Historical Society, as that would be connected to them as well through some of their Black families. So I don't know if there's ever been any thought of connecting with them or partnering with them, or if they'd even be interested. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for sure. We have not done that, but there's always, yes, we're, certainly interested in doing that. Also, there are some ancestors of those children living in the village now that we would definitely like to interview and hear more of their, sort of family story. Part of that is, having the time and getting together with the people.
Right, and that might be an opportunity to leverage some grant monies, from a different stream. If you could consider that those children attended that school, so those, families were in that community. So just a thought.
That's a great thought, yeah.
And I see someone else has asked whether you've looked in the Tweedsmuir books for information and newspaper articles, pictures of the schoolhouse, that kind of thing.
Sorry, what was it?
The Tweedsmuir books?
No. I would like more information.
Cindy or
Hi,
Linda, can you?
it's
Yeah.
Linda.
Go ahead, Linda.
Hi. Yeah, I was just going to say, the AIRS organization, they have copies of the Colchester area Tweedsmuir books. I've scanned them, so I'm just trying to remember if there was anything specific about the schoolhouse. I don't remember, but I'll look into that and get back to you if there is.
That would be great.
Yeah,
Very good.
because
Well, thank you for that.
one of their things that they did, this was the women's help me, Cindy. It was
Women's
like the women's
Institute.
organization.
The Women's
The
Institute.
Women's Institute, yes, and they call them the Tweetsmeer book because it's named after the wife of one of the governor generals, Mr. Tweetsmeer, and she encouraged all of the groups of the Women's Institute, and they were all over the county, to write a little bit of a history of the area, and that did include information on education. So I'll look into that and see what I can find for you, and I can get that to you.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much. Please feel free to contact either myself or Monica with the information. We're
Sure.
live about a block away from each other, a long block if you call it. I'll go around the corner of one of them. But yeah, we often get together and swap stories, and share pictures, and everything else we can get. But it's been an interesting path to take. When I moved out to Colchester, I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be so involved in starting and trying to drive the process forward to start a historical, it's been hysterical in some time, a historical organization. I had never considered it at any time in my life, but when I heard that they were going to declare it surplus, that energized the whole community, because they've all been waiting to see what the town was going to do. And so we're grateful that we did succeed. Right now, we have a 10-year lease paid in full for the rest of the balance of it for another 8.5 years or whatever, with an option to renew it for another 10 years. The town has also expressed their thanks to us on many occasions for pursuing it and following through with it. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people would go to the Municipal Heritage Committee meetings and show interest, and for some reason they didn't come back. The town didn't follow up, or whatever the reason was, and it just failed to develop anywhere. And I guess it took a potential sale, a potential loss of the property from public use, to energize the community enough, and somebody with what would you say, enough gumption, enough lack of knowledge of local history to go to the town council and say, I'll do it for you, we'll get it done. I've looked at all the records from the municipal heritage meetings and point out that there has been interest and they just didn't follow through with it, and we're going to do it, type of thing. It took us some convincing, there's no doubt about that, but we have been successful and we're grateful for that. The town of Essex is now working very closely with us on a lot of this stuff. So it's going to take, again, since we've been in existence for such a short period of time, there isn't any budget money available. They didn't know whether we'd be successful or not at being established as a heritage organization. It could have been something else that just everybody else had said, yeah, I'm interested, but nothing ever happens. So by following through, and we've got about 35, 38 members right now, active members. If anybody is interested, come out to the market on Saturday. It's more a craft show, artists, things like that. We've got food trucks, we've got fused glass, all kinds of things, as well as things of general interest. But the schoolhouse will be open for tours. I'm putting in some temporary lighting right now. So it has been very dimly lit in a lot of the rooms with all the electrical system. We don't know whether it's when the town took off the classrooms, whether they disconnected some wiring we haven't been able to find. But we found a way to put up some temporary lighting, and we're going to require that when we start doing some demolition work. But it will be open on Saturday for the market. I'll be only too happy to lead people through it and explain what we're trying to do, as well as answer any questions you might have of the history of it or various other aspects of it. As far as the Black community, we do have some members of Heritage Colchester are the Johnson family. We're grateful for their participation. Early on, there was a lot of comments about, in the pictures in particular, where you notice the separation of the races. And what we do is we offer charity, not-for-profit groups, charity groups, free space at the markets. AIRS has been coming out with book sales and information about their organization Freedom Museum has been out with their representations. Caldwell Nation has been out with their representatives. We more than welcome their participation. Actually, when you talk about information from the Black community, Milo Johnson has taken a particular interest in the schoolhouse and was at the last market a month ago, walking around with his iPad, filming everything he could because he knows it's going to be changing very soon. And he and I have had some great conversations about the Black history in the neighborhood and also about the Colchester Schoolhouse and discrimination and everything else. Some of his books are very interesting. He makes a lot of comments about the freedom seekers coming over here, escaped slaves coming up from the South, and their routes they took and things like that. But a lot of them were very surprised when they came over here to see that some of the loyalists that had come from the States after the American Revolution had brought their own slaves over here. And some of in the Amherstburg history where they had 30 or 40 slaves working for them, for Amherstburg areas. Unheard of. You don't hear about that in history unless you talk to people at the Black History Museum or you talk to an author like Milo Johnson, who's documenting everything he can. Anyway, enough about that. Cindy or Monica, anybody take it?
I'm really aware of the time, and so I just want to thank everyone for inviting us to come and for your interest in our great project. We're proud of it and looking forward to sharing it.
Okay, it is past our time, so I will wrap things up. And if there are no more questions, I just want to thank Perry and Monica for this excellent presentation. It's been so interesting, very informative, and thanks very much to their organization for their persistence in saving the old Colchester Schoolhouse. We really need more of that in our community, because when you see some of the historical areas elsewhere in other countries, there seems to be a desire to preserve things that we don't seem to have that as much in Canada. So the more people like you that we can find, the better for everybody. So with that, I'm going to just close the meeting and invite you all to come back in October and visit us when we do another webinar. And this will be on the Wyandotte Cemetery, the women in the Wyandotte Cemetery. I'm sure everybody will really enjoy it. It sounds like it's going to be very, very interesting. So bye for now. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.